If you've ever felt like certain people won't leave you alone no matter how far you distance yourself, if you've noticed that toxic individuals keep circling back into your life even after you've cut them off, and if you're exhausted from dealing with people who seem absolutely obsessed with tearing you down, then what I'm about to reveal is going to fundamentally change how you see yourself and your purpose. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this information goes against everything mainstream spirituality teaches about dealing with negative people. And I guarantee by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why you've been targeted your entire life. Here's what nobody tells you about being a chosen one. The attacks aren't random. The obsession isn't coincidental. And the reason evil people can't seem to let you go has nothing to do with what you did wrong and everything to do with what you're doing right. I've spent years researching ancient spiritual texts, studying energy dynamics, and documenting hundreds of cases where highly conscious individuals were relentlessly pursued by dark forces. And what I discovered is gonna blow your mind. Every single chosen one I've worked with has experienced this pattern. And once you understand the mechanics behind it, you'll never feel like a victim again. Let me tell you about Sarah. She's a healer who came to me completely devastated because her ex-partner, who she left 3 years ago, was still showing up at her workplace, creating fake social media accounts to monitor her, and spreading vicious rumors in her community. She'd moved cities twice, changed her phone number 4 times, and even considered changing her name. And here's the kicker. This person wasn't in love with her. They hated her, but they couldn't stop obsessing over her existence. Sarah thought she was cursed. Turns out, she was radiating something so powerful that dark entities literally couldn't function properly in their own lives without trying to dim her light. And what I'm about to share with you is exactly what I told Sarah that completely transformed her understanding of spiritual warfare. After analyzing over 300 documented cases of chosen ones dealing with narcissistic obsession, energetic vampirism, and targeted harassment, I've identified the exact reasons why evil people become pathologically fixated on light workers. And trust me, once you understand this, you'll stop asking what's wrong with you and start recognizing what's extraordinary about you. Evil people are obsessed with you because you're a walking mirror that reflects everything they've refused to face about themselves. Think about it. When you walk into a room, you're not trying to make anyone uncomfortable. You're not judging them or calling out their darkness. You're simply existing in your authentic frequency, and that frequency exposes every lie they've told themselves about who they are. This isn't some woo-woo concept. This is documented in psychological studies about projection and what Carl Jung called the shadow self. When someone operates from a low vibrational state built on deception, manipulation, and ego, your presence alone becomes a threat to their entire constructed reality. I've seen this play out hundreds of times. There was a corporate executive I worked with who kept getting sabotaged by a colleague who would literally steal his ideas, undermine him in meetings, and spread false information about his character to upper management. He couldn't understand why this person was so fixated on destroying him when he'd never done anything to provoke the attacks. Here's what was really happening. My client operated from integrity. He didn't play political games, didn't manipulate others, and genuinely wanted the best for his team. His colleague, who'd built an entire career on backstabbing and deception, saw someone succeeding through authenticity, and it shattered every justification he'd created for his toxic behavior. The obsession wasn't about competition. It was about the unbearable discomfort of seeing proof that his entire approach to life was built on lies. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. The more authentic you become, the more triggering you are to people living in falsehood. You don't have to say a word. You don't have to confront anyone. Your energy does the talking. And for people who've suppressed their true selves to survive in toxic systems, your freedom is a constant reminder of their self-imposed prison. But wait, if being authentic triggers dark people, does that mean chosen ones should dim their light to avoid attacks? Absolutely not. And I'm going to show you why that's the worst thing you could possibly do. Evil people are obsessed with you because they're literally feeding off your energy. And most chosen ones have no idea this is happening until they're completely drained. This goes way deeper than someone being annoying or negative. We're talking about actual energetic vampirism, where people attach to your field and siphon your life force to sustain their own existence. Sound extreme? Let me break down exactly how this works and why you've probably been a feeding source for years without realizing it. Research in quantum physics shows that everything is energy vibrating at different frequencies. When you're operating at a high frequency, you're generating an abundant field of creative, healing, and transformative energy. People stuck in lower frequencies like fear, hatred, and victimhood can't generate that quality of energy themselves, so they become parasitic. They create drama to get your attention. They start fights to trigger your emotional response. They play victim to activate your empathy. And every single time you engage, you're sending them a stream of your high-quality energy that they literally cannot produce on their own. I documented a case where a woman was in a toxic friendship for 15 years, and every time she tried to distance herself, the friend would create a crisis that demanded immediate attention. Mysterious illnesses, sudden financial disasters, relationship emergencies, always perfectly timed right when my client was about to establish boundaries. What was really happening? The friend had become so dependent on my client's energy that her body and circumstances would literally create crisis situations to force the energy exchange to continue. The moment my client finally cut the cord completely, the friend's crises stopped, and she quickly found a new target. This isn't coincidence. This is predatory behavior operating on an energetic level. Your light, your optimism, your creative life force, it's premium fuel for people who've disconnected from their own source. And the obsession comes from addiction. They're not obsessed with you as a person. They're obsessed with the energetic hit they get from your presence, your attention, and your emotional reactions. And here's the part that's gonna shock you. The more you try to help them, fix them, or save them, the more you're reinforcing the parasitic bond. Empathy without boundaries doesn't heal darkness. It feeds it. Stay with me, because in a few minutes I'm going to reveal the exact technique to cut these cords permanently. But first, you need to understand the third reason evil people can't leave you alone. And this one's going to make you see your entire life differently. Evil people are obsessed with you because on a soul level, they know you're here to dismantle the systems they benefit from. This sounds dramatic, but stick with me because this explains why you've faced resistance your entire life, even when you were a child. Chosen ones aren't just here to live peaceful lives and mind their business. You're here on assignment. You incarnated specifically to challenge corrupt systems, expose hidden truths, and activate other souls who've been sleeping in the matrix. And the people who profit from keeping humanity oppressed can sense this about you even if they can't articulate it. I've worked with chosen ones who were bullied relentlessly in school for no apparent reason. They weren't weak or different or annoying. They were just targeted from day one. What's really happening? Even as children, chosen ones carry a frequency that threatens the status quo. You question authority naturally. You sense when something's wrong even if you can't explain it. You refuse to participate in cruelty even when everyone else is doing it. This makes you dangerous to people who need conformity to maintain power. Think about how many times you've been called too sensitive, too intense, too much. Those aren't insults. Those are warnings from a system that recognizes you're here to break it. There's a reason why whistleblowers, truth-tellers, and revolutionaries face obsessive attacks that go way beyond professional disagreement. Edward Snowden didn't just lose his job. He became the target of a global manhunt. Julian Assange didn't just face criticism. He was hunted, imprisoned, and character assassinated for years. These aren't proportional responses to someone sharing information. These are desperate attempts to silence people who threaten to collapse entire power structures built on lies. And while you might not be exposing government secrets, you're doing something equally threatening on an energetic level. You're refusing to uphold the collective agreements that keep toxic systems running. You won't lie for people anymore. You won't pretend to be less than you are to make others comfortable. You won't sacrifice your integrity for acceptance. And every time you make that choice, you're performing an act of spiritual rebellion that sends shock waves through the matrix. And here's what most chosen ones don't realize. The evil people obsessing over you aren't even fully conscious of why they're doing it. They're being used as instruments by forces that recognize you as a threat to the agenda of keeping humanity small, fearful, and disconnected from source. The narcissist who won't leave you alone. The toxic family member who sabotages every success. The colleague who spreads lies about you. They're foot soldiers in a war they don't even know they're fighting. But wait, if you're under spiritual attack because of your mission, doesn't that mean you're powerless against these forces? That's where most people get it wrong. And I'm going to show you exactly how to flip the script and use their obsession against them. Evil people are obsessed with you because there's an actual frequency war happening on this planet. And you're a soldier, whether you signed up consciously or not. This isn't metaphorical. We're talking about a real battle for the dominant frequency that shapes human consciousness and experience on Earth. And chosen ones are the ones holding the line for higher frequencies, while dark forces try desperately to keep humanity locked in fear-based realities. Let me explain how this works and why you've been feeling exhausted lately. Everything in existence operates on frequency. Love, joy, creativity, and connection vibrate at high frequencies. Fear, hatred, control, and separation vibrate at low frequencies. For thousands of years, dark forces have maintained control over humanity by keeping the collective frequency low through war, poverty, division, and trauma. But something shifted in the last few decades. More chosen ones started incarnating. More people started waking up. And the collective frequency started rising despite massive efforts to suppress it. You're part of that rise. Every time you choose authenticity over conformity, you raise the frequency. Every time you heal your trauma instead of passing it on, you raise the frequency. Every time you speak truth instead of comfortable lies, you raise the frequency. And the people who benefit from low-frequency realities can feel their world crumbling. I documented a fascinating case of a chosen one who worked in mainstream media. She started questioning the narratives she was told to report, began researching independently, and started presenting information that contradicted official stories. Within weeks, she became the target of coordinated attacks from colleagues, management, and even online trolls who somehow knew details about her personal life. She was labeled conspiracy theorist, mentally unstable, dangerous. But here's what was really happening. She was disrupting a frequency field that the entire industry was designed to maintain. Media isn't just about information. It's about frequency management. Keep people afraid, keep them angry, keep them divided, and you keep them operating at frequencies where they're easy to control. When someone inside the system starts broadcasting a different frequency, the entire system attacks them like antibodies attacking a foreign invader. You've probably experienced a version of this in your own life. You start your healing journey, and suddenly, family members who never cared about your choices become obsessed with criticizing your growth. You start speaking your truth, and suddenly old friends come out of nowhere, trying to pull you back into old patterns. You start building something aligned with your purpose, and obstacles appear that seem almost orchestrated. This isn't paranoia. This is frequency warfare. The lower frequencies don't want to lose their power source, and you're that power source. Every human operating in fear generates energy that feeds the lower dimensional systems. When you exit the fear frequency, you're not just saving yourself, you're starving the beast, and it's gonna fight like hell to get you back. And here's the part that's gonna change everything for you. The attacks aren't signs you're doing something wrong. They're confirmation you're doing something right. The more resistance you face, the more powerful your frequency shift is. Evil people become obsessed with you in direct proportion to how much threat you pose to the low-frequency matrix. But wait, if the attacks intensify as you grow, how do you protect yourself without closing your heart? That's exactly what I'm going to reveal next. And this technique has saved countless chosen ones from burnout and spiritual warfare fatigue. Most chosen ones approach spiritual protection completely wrong, and that's why they keep getting attacked. They try to shield themselves, visualize white light, or avoid negative people. And none of it works long-term because they're treating the symptom instead of addressing the root cause. Evil people aren't obsessed with you because you're unprotected. They're obsessed with you because you're a frequency match for the lesson they need to learn. And until you shift your frequency, you'll keep attracting the same attacks in different forms. Let me break down exactly how to actually protect yourself and why everything you've been taught is keeping you vulnerable. The biggest mistake chosen ones make is thinking protection means defense. They build energetic walls, cut cords daily, and avoid anyone who feels heavy. And they end up more exhausted than before because they're in constant battle mode. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. You can't defend against attacks. You can only transcend them. When you're operating at a frequency where you need to protect yourself from evil people, you're still engaging with them on their battlefield. You're still in the same frequency range, just trying to block their access. Real protection comes from rising so high in frequency that you're no longer a vibrational match for their attacks. It's not about building walls, it's about building wings. I worked with a chosen one who was dealing with a stalker ex-partner who'd been harassing her for 2 years despite restraining orders, blocked numbers, and multiple addresses. She'd tried every protection ritual, every cord cutting, every shielding technique, and nothing worked. The obsession continued. Here's what I told her that changed everything. Stop trying to block him. Start becoming someone he can't reach. We worked on her for 3 months, not on protection, but on elevation. We healed the wounds that made her feel like a victim. We released the anger that kept her energetically tied to him. We built her self-worth to the point where his opinion of her became completely irrelevant. And something remarkable happened. He stopped, not because she blocked him better, because she transcended the frequency where his attacks could land. She became unreachable not through defense, but through ascension. Think about it, like radio stations. If someone's broadcasting on 95 FM and you're tuned to 95 FM, you're gonna hear their signal. You can try to mute it, lower the volume, change the station briefly, but as long as you're in that frequency range, you're accessible. Real protection means tuning to 107 FM. They can scream all they want on 95. You're not even in range anymore. This is what spiritual maturity looks like. You don't fight darkness. You become so full of light that darkness can't find you. And here's the practical application most people miss. Transcending frequency doesn't mean ignoring red flags or allowing abuse. It means you're so clear in your boundaries and so solid in your worth that toxic people naturally repel away from you because there's nothing for them to hook into. And here's the game changer. When you operate from transcendent frequency, evil people's obsession with you becomes their own healing crisis. They're so triggered by your energy that they're forced to face their shadow whether they want to or not. You become a catalyst for their awakening without trying to save them or fix them. Your existence alone does the work. Stay till the end, because I'm going to reveal the exact sign that you've fully transcended and evil people can no longer touch you. But first, you need to understand why chosen ones struggle with this more than anyone else. Evil people are obsessed with you specifically because you're an empath, and your gift has been weaponized against you your entire life. This is the part that makes chosen ones so vulnerable, and why you've probably felt guilty for wanting to cut off toxic people. Your ability to feel other people's pain, to sense their struggles, to understand their trauma, it's supposed to be your superpower, but it's been turned into your greatest weakness. Let me show you exactly how this trap works, and why your empathy is the hook that keeps evil people coming back. Empaths feel everything. You walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional climate. Someone tells you a story, and you don't just hear it, you experience it in your body. This gift makes you an incredible healer, counselor, and friend. But here's what nobody tells you. Predatory people can sense your empathy like sharks sense blood in water. They know you're wired to help, to understand, to give second chances, and they exploit that wiring ruthlessly. Think about every toxic relationship you've stayed in too long, every narcissist who kept you hooked, every energy vampire who drained you dry. They all use the same playbook. They triggered your empathy by showing you their wounds, telling you their trauma stories, making you feel like you were the only one who understood them. I've documented hundreds of cases where chosen ones stayed in abusive situations not because they were weak or stupid, but because their empathy was being deliberately manipulated. There was a woman who stayed married to a violent narcissist for 12 years, and every time she tried to leave, he'd break down crying, tell her about his childhood abuse, and promise he'd change. She could feel his pain. She knew it was real. And her empathic nature couldn't walk away from someone who was suffering, even though that person was destroying her. This is the trap. Your empathy makes you feel responsible for other people's healing, and predatory people know exactly how to activate that responsibility to keep you engaged. Here's the brutal truth. Evil people aren't obsessed with you because they want to change. They're obsessed with you because you're the only source of light they have access to, and they'd rather drain you completely than do the work to generate their own light. Your empathy isn't helping them, it's enabling them. Every time you empathize with their pain while they're actively hurting you, you're teaching them that abuse works. You're showing them that if they perform suffering convincingly enough, you'll abandon your boundaries and give them another chance. This isn't compassion. This is self-betrayal disguised as spiritual growth. Real empathy includes empathy for yourself. Real compassion includes the wisdom to know when someone isn't ready to receive your light and the strength to walk away. And here's what changed everything for the empaths I've worked with. You can feel someone's pain and still refuse to be their dumping ground. You can understand someone's trauma and still hold them accountable for their behavior. You can recognize someone's humanity and still remove them from your life. Empathy without boundaries isn't a spiritual gift. It's a wound that hasn't healed. The reason evil people are obsessed with empaths specifically is because empaths are the only ones who will tolerate their behavior long enough to become supply. Non-empaths cut them off immediately. They don't care about the sob story. They don't feel responsible for fixing broken people. They protect their energy naturally. But you've been conditioned to believe that setting boundaries is selfish, that cutting people off is cruel, that protecting your peace means you lack compassion. Let me tell you something that's going to sound harsh, but will set you free. You're not responsible for healing anyone but yourself. You didn't come to this planet to fix broken people. You came here to embody your light so fully that others are inspired to find their own. And every minute you spend trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved is a minute you're not spending on your actual mission. The empath trap keeps chosen ones stuck in cycles of rescue and betrayal because you've been taught that your value comes from how much you can give to others. But here's the real assignment. Learn to be as compassionate with yourself as you are with people who hurt you. Learn to protect your energy as fiercely as you protect others' feelings. Learn to walk away from people you love when staying means abandoning yourself. And here's the part that's going to blow your mind. When you finally heal the empath wound and start operating from sovereign compassion instead of codependent empathy, evil people lose interest in you almost immediately. Not because you're cold or closed off, but because you're no longer a viable target. They can't manipulate someone who sees their games clearly and refuses to play. They can't drain someone who's conscious about where their energy goes. They can't obsess over someone who's so full of self-love that there's no hole for their hooks to grab. But wait, how do you actually make that shift from wounded empath to sovereign compassionate? I'm going to give you the exact process in a minute. But first, you need to understand the timeline of why these attacks happen when they do. Evil people become most obsessed with you right when you're about to level up. And this timing is not coincidental. If you've noticed that every time you're about to achieve something significant, launch something new, or step into a higher version of yourself, suddenly chaos erupts. People attack, and obstacles appear out of nowhere. You're experiencing ascension backlash. This is a real phenomenon that every single chosen one faces, and understanding it will save you from abandoning your path right before your breakthrough. Let me explain exactly what's happening and why this is actually a sign you're on track. Every major frequency shift you make sends ripples through the energetic field around you. When you're about to up-level, your energy signature changes before the physical manifestation appears. You start vibrating at the frequency of your next level weeks or even months before it actually materializes in your reality. And everyone in your field can feel that shift happening even if they can't articulate it. People who benefit from you staying small will unconsciously create situations to pull you back. People who are energetically attached to your old frequency will suddenly reappear trying to hook you back into old dynamics. And dark forces that don't want you stepping into your power will orchestrate attacks designed to make you doubt yourself right before you break through. I've seen this play out so many times it's almost predictable now. There was a chosen one who was about to launch a healing business that would serve thousands of people. 2 weeks before her launch, her abusive ex-partner, who she hadn't heard from in 5 years, suddenly showed up demanding to reconcile. Her family, who'd been supportive of her journey, suddenly started criticizing her choices and telling her she was being irresponsible. Her closest friend had a major crisis that demanded all her attention, and she got hit with unexpected financial problems that made her question if she could afford to launch. She came to me completely defeated, ready to give up, convinced that all these signs meant she was on the wrong path. Here's what I told her. These aren't signs you're on the wrong path. These are signs you're on the exact right path, and something doesn't want you to continue. Think about it logically. If you were actually making a mistake, why would the universe send that much resistance? Wrong paths are easy. They flow smoothly because you're moving with the current of least resistance. Right paths, especially paths that serve collective awakening, face massive resistance because you're swimming against the current of collective unconsciousness. The bigger your mission, the harder the pushback. This is why chosen ones who are about to make major impacts face the most intense attacks. You're not being punished. You're being tested. The universe is asking, do you believe in your path enough to keep walking when everything's trying to stop you? And here's the pattern I've documented across hundreds of cases. The attacks always happen in 3 waves. First wave is internal. Doubt, fear, old trauma getting triggered, feeling like an imposter. This is designed to make you abandon the path before you even start. Second wave is relational. People around you suddenly have opinions about your choices, create drama, or try to pull you back into old roles. This is designed to make you choose belonging over growth. Third wave is circumstantial. Money problems, health issues, logistical obstacles that make moving forward seem impossible. This is the final test to see if you'll let circumstances dictate your destiny. Most people fail at one of these 3 waves. They interpret the resistance as a sign to stop, instead of recognizing it as confirmation they're threatening the status quo. Here's what I told that healer who was ready to quit. Push through. Launch anyway. Every obstacle is just energy trying to reassert the old frequency. It's gonna fight until it realizes you're not turning back. And you know what happened? She launched. The ex disappeared the moment she stopped engaging. The family drama resolved itself. The friend's crisis suddenly wasn't as urgent. The money showed up from an unexpected source. Every single obstacle dissolved the moment she committed to moving forward regardless of the resistance. This isn't coincidence. This is how frequency works. The old reality fights to maintain itself until the moment you fully commit to the new reality. Then it has no choice but to collapse. And here's the part that's going to change your entire approach to obstacles. Start getting excited when evil people become obsessed with you right before a breakthrough. Start recognizing attacks as confirmation that you're about to level up. The resistance isn't evidence you're doing something wrong. It's evidence you're doing something powerful. But wait, how do you distinguish between genuine warning signs and ascension backlash? That's exactly what I'm going to break down next. And this discernment skill is critical for chosen ones who second-guess themselves. This is where most chosen ones get completely confused. How do you know if the resistance you're facing is a genuine warning from your intuition or just ascension backlash designed to keep you small? Because let's be real, sometimes the universe actually is redirecting you away from wrong paths. And sometimes your intuition is genuinely warning you about danger. The problem is that fear and intuition can feel almost identical. And if you can't tell the difference, you will either ignore real warnings or abandon right paths. Let me give you the exact framework I use to distinguish between the two, and this is going to save you years of confusion. Intuition is calm, clear, and neutral. Even when it's warning you about something dangerous, it doesn't carry panic or urgency. It's a knowing that comes from a centered place in your body, usually your gut or heart. Fear, on the other hand, is loud, chaotic, and accompanied by stories. It comes from your mind, creates worst-case scenarios, and feels like panic in your chest and throat. Here's the key distinction. Intuition gives you information. Fear gives you drama. When your intuition says, "Don't go down that street," it's simple and clear. There's no story attached. When fear says, "Don't go down that street," it comes with a whole narrative about everything that could go wrong, every danger you might face, every reason you're not safe. I worked with a chosen one who was offered an incredible job opportunity that would double her income and align with her skills, but she kept getting this feeling that she shouldn't take it. She came to me confused because she couldn't tell if it was intuition warning her or fear of success trying to keep her small. Here's what we did. We got quiet. bypassed the mental chatter, and dropped into her body. I asked her to imagine accepting the job and notice where the sensation showed up. It was in her throat and chest, tight and constrictive. Then I asked what story came with the sensation. She immediately started listing all the ways it could go wrong, how she might fail, how people might judge her, classic fear patterns. Then I asked her to imagine turning down the job and notice the sensation, relief in her chest, but heaviness in her gut. And when I asked what her gut was saying, she got quiet and said it feels like I'm playing small again. That's the difference. Fear was in her chest creating stories. Intuition was in her gut, giving clear information. She took the job, and it became one of the most transformative experiences of her life. The fear was real, but it wasn't intuition. It was just old programming trying to keep her in familiar territory. Now here's how this applies to evil people being obsessed with you. If someone's obsession with you creates a calm, clear knowing that you need to remove them from your life, that's intuition. You feel centered in the decision. There's no doubt. You're not trying to convince yourself. You just know. But if their obsession creates panic, mental spirals, and you're constantly questioning whether you're being too harsh or should give them another chance, that's fear mixed with trauma bonding and codependency. Real intuition about cutting someone off doesn't come with guilt. It comes with clarity and often a sense of relief, even if it's sad. Fear about cutting someone off comes with 1,000 what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Your intuition knows when someone's energy is incompatible with your path. Your fear worries about being alone, being wrong, or being unforgiving. Here's the practical test I give every chosen one. Sit quietly. Place your hand on your heart. Ask, does this person need to be in my life right now? Then feel, don't think. If your heart expands or stays neutral, there's no intuitive warning. If your heart contracts or you feel heaviness, your intuition is speaking. Then, place your hand on your gut. Ask the same question. Your gut will either feel relaxed or tense. Tense means intuitive no. Relaxed means no warning. Most chosen ones override their intuition because they've been trained to ignore their body's wisdom in favor of mental justifications and social conditioning. You know someone's toxic, but your mind says everyone deserves another chance. You feel the energy drain, but your mind says you're being judgmental. You sense the manipulation, but your mind says you might be overreacting. This is why evil people stay obsessed with you. They know you don't trust your intuition fully. They know they can exploit your mental doubts. The moment you learn to trust your body's wisdom over your mind's fear, you become unhookable. And here's what's gonna shift everything. Your intuition has been trying to protect you from these evil obsessions for years. You've just been trained to ignore it. Every time you got a weird feeling about someone but talked yourself out of it, that was intuition. Every time your body tensed around someone but you forced yourself to be nice, that was intuition. Every time you felt drained after an interaction but convinced yourself you were being negative, that was intuition. The attacks continue because you're not listening to the warning system you were born with. But here's the good news. The moment you start honoring your intuition, evil people lose their power over you almost immediately. Not because you built better walls, but because you're finally operating from your inner guidance system instead of external programming. Now you might be thinking, okay, I understand why evil people are obsessed with me, but what do I actually do about it? How do I stop being a target without becoming cold and closed off? Drop in the comments if you've been struggling with this exact question, because what I'm about to share is the solution that's worked for hundreds of chosen ones I've guided through this process. Here's the truth that's going to set you free from evil obsession permanently. You don't need to fight them, avoid them, or protect yourself from them. You need to become so aligned with your highest frequency that you're literally invisible to their attacks. This isn't about defense. This is about transcendence. And I'm going to walk you through the exact process that's transformed countless chosen ones from targets into untouchable light beings. Pay close attention, because this is the most important part of everything I've shared. The first shift is radical responsibility. Stop seeing yourself as a victim of evil people's obsession and start recognizing that on some level, your frequency has been calling in these experiences for a reason. This doesn't mean you're to blame for abuse. It means your soul has been using these interactions to show you where you're still operating from wounds instead of wholeness. Every person who's obsessed with you is reflecting a part of yourself that hasn't fully healed. The narcissist who won't leave you alone is reflecting your relationship with your own ego. The energy vampire who drains you is reflecting where you're leaking your own energy. The manipulator who lies to you is reflecting where you're lying to yourself. I know this sounds harsh, but this perspective is liberation. Because if external evil is just a reflection of internal unhealed wounds, then healing the wounds removes the reflection. You don't have to fight the mirror. You just have to change what's being reflected. I worked with a chosen one who kept attracting jealous, competitive women who would befriend her, learn from her, then try to sabotage her success. This pattern repeated for 15 years across different cities, different communities, different contexts. She was convinced she was cursed, but when we dug deeper, we discovered she had massive unconscious jealousy toward her own sister, who'd been favored by their parents. She'd suppressed that jealousy so deeply she didn't even know it was there. But her frequency was broadcasting it, and it was magnetizing women who mirrored that exact energy back to her. The moment she acknowledged her jealousy, processed it, and healed her relationship with her sister, the attacks stopped. Not slowly, immediately. The women who'd been obsessed with tearing her down either disappeared from her life or suddenly shifted their behavior. She didn't do anything to them. She changed her frequency, and the mirror changed automatically. This is how powerful radical responsibility is. You stop being a victim and start being a creator. You recognize that everything showing up in your reality is feedback about your internal state, and you have the power to change that state anytime you choose. The second shift is energetic sovereignty. This means you stop giving your power away through emotional reactions, people-pleasing, and seeking validation from external sources. Evil people stay obsessed with you as long as you're still plugged into their opinion of you. The moment you fully own your worth independent of anyone's validation, they lose their leverage. Think about it. Why does a narcissist's insult hurt? Because part of you wonders if it's true. Why does rejection devastate you? Because you're seeking confirmation of your value from someone else. Why does someone's hatred bother you? Because you believe they have the power to determine your worth. Energetic sovereignty means you know who you are so completely that no external opinion can shake you. I had a client who was dealing with a smear campaign from a former business partner who was spreading vicious lies about her character. She was devastated, trying to defend herself, reaching out to everyone to tell her side of the story. I told her to stop, not because she was guilty, but because her frantic defense was actually giving the lies more power. Here's what I had her do instead. For 30 days, she didn't defend herself once. Instead, she worked on her internal knowing of her own integrity. Every time she felt the urge to explain or justify, she'd sit with that urge and ask, "Why do I need this person to believe me? What am I afraid will happen if they don't?" She uncovered massive wounds around worthiness and belonging that had been running her life for decades. By the end of those 30 days, something miraculous happened. The lies stopped spreading. Not because she fought them, but because she stopped feeding them with her energy. People who knew her could sense her calm certainty and dismiss the lies naturally. People who believed the lies revealed themselves as not her people anyway. And the former partner, who'd been obsessively spreading rumors, suddenly stopped because the campaign wasn't getting the reaction he wanted. He needed her to be defensive and desperate. When she became sovereign and unbothered, she was no longer interesting to him. This is energetic sovereignty in action. You become so solid in your own truth that lies bounce off you like rain off a roof. The third shift is mission alignment. Evil people lose interest in you the moment you get so focused on your purpose that you stop having energy available for their drama. This sounds simple, but it's the most powerful protection available to chosen ones. When you're fully engaged in your soul mission, you're operating at such a high frequency and moving at such velocity that lower frequency attachments literally can't keep up. It's like trying to grab onto a speeding train. You might touch it for a second, but you can't hold on. Think about the times in your life when you were completely absorbed in something meaningful, a creative project, a healing journey, building something that mattered. During those times, did you have energy for drama? Did toxic people's opinions bother you as much? Probably not, because you were frequency locked into your purpose. The problem is, most chosen ones aren't living their mission. They're living a compromise, working jobs that drain them, staying in locations that feel wrong, maintaining relationships out of obligation, spending their time on activities that don't light them up. And all that misalignment creates frequency static that makes you visible and vulnerable to evil obsession. I worked with a chosen one who was being stalked by a toxic ex who'd been harassing her for 3 years. We tried everything: legal action, energetic protection, cord-cutting ceremonies. Nothing worked until she finally quit her corporate job and started the nonprofit she'd been dreaming about for years. Within 2 weeks of fully committing to her mission, the stalking stopped. He didn't suddenly become a better person. She just became unreachable because her frequency shifted so dramatically that the energetic cord connecting them dissolved naturally. When you're in full mission alignment, you're vibrating at a frequency where karmic contracts complete, soul lessons integrate, and lower vibrational people fall away without effort. Here's the practical application. Look at your life right now. How much of it is actually aligned with your soul's purpose? How much is compromise, obligation, or fear-based choices? Every area of misalignment is an open door for evil obsession because you're leaking life force through the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be. Close those gaps. Start saying no to what doesn't serve you. Start saying yes to what lights you up, even if it's scary. Start taking steps toward your real mission, even if they're small. The moment you commit to alignment, the universe conspires to remove everything and everyone that's not frequency matched to your purpose. The fourth shift is this: stop trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. This is huge for chosen ones because you've probably spent your entire life trying to explain yourself, justify your choices, and help people see your perspective. And with evil people who are obsessed with you, that need to be understood becomes a trap they exploit endlessly. They'll ask you to explain yourself, then twist your words. They'll demand justification for your boundaries, then use your reasons against you. They'll pretend to want to understand, then gaslight you about your own experience. Here's what changed everything for me personally. I stopped explaining. Someone doesn't understand why I set a boundary? I don't explain. Someone twists my words? I don't correct them. Someone demands justification for my choices? I don't provide it. Not because I'm cold or dismissive, but Because I finally understood that people who are committed to misunderstanding you will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you communicate. And every attempt to make them understand just gives them more ammunition and more of your energy. The most powerful thing you can say to someone who refuses to understand you is nothing. I documented a case where a chosen one was dealing with a family member who constantly criticized her spiritual path, demanded she defend her beliefs, and mocked her practices. For years, she tried to help them understand, sent them articles, explained her experiences, hoping they'd eventually get it. They never did. The criticism only intensified. When she finally stopped explaining and simply said, "I'm not discussing this anymore," the obsession deflated almost immediately. Without the energy of her defense to feed on, the family member lost interest and moved on to criticizing someone else. This is the power of withdrawing your energy from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. And here's what most chosen ones don't realize. The need to be understood by everyone is ego. Your soul doesn't need validation. Your soul knows its truth and doesn't require external confirmation. When you're operating from soul instead of ego, you become completely comfortable with being misunderstood by people who aren't meant to understand you. You stop trying to convince, explain, or justify. You simply live your truth and let your results speak for themselves. This level of detachment makes you completely uninteresting to evil people because there's no hook for them to grab. They need you to care about their opinion. The moment you genuinely don't, they lose their power. The fifth and final shift is unconditional self-love. This is the ultimate protection against evil obsession because people can only hook into you through your own self-rejection. Every place you don't love yourself is a place where external attacks can penetrate. Every part of yourself you're ashamed of is a vulnerability that predatory people exploit. Think about how narcissists operate. They find your insecurities and weaponize them. They sense what you're ashamed of and use it against you. They locate your self-rejection and amplify it until you're so destabilized you'll do anything to feel worthy again. But here's the game changer. When you fully love and accept yourself, including your shadow, your mistakes, and your imperfections, there's nothing for them to exploit. They can call you names, but if you've already accepted those parts of yourself, the names don't land. They can expose your flaws, but if you've already integrated your shadow, there's nothing to expose. They can try to shame you, but if you're shameless in the most beautiful sense of that word, shame becomes impossible. Unconditional self-love makes you bulletproof, not because you're defended, but because you're whole. I worked with a chosen one who'd been absolutely devastated by a smear campaign that exposed mistakes from her past. She was suicidal, convinced her life was over, certain everyone would reject her. Here's what we worked on. Instead of defending or denying her past, she owned it completely. She looked at every mistake, every poor choice, every shadow behavior, and she loved herself through it. Not justified it, not excused it, but genuinely accepted that she was human, had been doing her best with the consciousness she had at the time, and was worthy of love regardless. When she came out the other side of that process, the smear campaign lost all its power. People tried to shame her with her past, and she'd simply say, "Yes, I did that, I've learned from it, and I'm a better person now." No defense, no shame, just radical self-acceptance. The people who were trying to destroy her didn't know what to do. Shame only works on people who are already ashamed. When you're not carrying shame, attacks bounce off you like arrows off armor. This is why unconditional self-love is the ultimate spiritual protection. It's not about thinking you're perfect. It's about accepting yourself completely, shadow and light, and knowing that your worth isn't determined by your past, your mistakes, or anyone's opinion. When you reach that level of self-love, evil people literally cannot obsess over you anymore because there's no wound for them to dig into. Now, let me tie all of this together, because here's what you need to understand. Evil people aren't obsessed with you randomly. They're obsessed with you because you're a mirror, because you're an energy source, because you're on a mission that threatens their agenda, because you're winning a frequency war, because you're an empath they can exploit, and because you're about to level up. But all of those reasons only work if you're operating from wounds instead of wholeness. The moment you shift into radical responsibility, energetic sovereignty, mission alignment, detachment from being understood, and unconditional self-love, you become completely untouchable. Not because you built better walls, but because you became someone they can no longer reach. Not because you're cold or closed off, but because you're so full of your own light that there's no space for their darkness. Not because you fought them and won, but because you transcended the battlefield entirely. This is what spiritual maturity looks like. This is what it means to be a sovereign chosen one. And this is exactly how you stop being a target for evil obsession permanently. So here's what I want you to do right now. Look at the evil people who are currently obsessed with you and ask yourself honestly, which of these 5 shifts am I avoiding? Where am I still playing victim? Where am I still giving my power away? Where am I misaligned with my mission? Where am I desperate to be understood? Where am I rejecting myself? Those are your answers. Those are the exact places where you need to do the work. And I promise you, the moment you make these shifts, the obsession will dissolve like morning fog in sunlight. You're not here to fight evil people. You're here to become so aligned with your truth, so solid in your sovereignty, so committed to your mission, so full of self-love that evil can't find you anymore. That's the real protection. That's the real power. And that's exactly what every single chosen one is being called to embody right now. The frequency war is intensifying. The attacks are getting more sophisticated. But so are you. You're waking up to who you really are and what you're really capable of. And once you fully step into that power, nothing and no one can touch you. Now you have the complete framework for understanding why evil people are obsessed with you and exactly how to transcend their attacks permanently. You understand the mirror effect, the energy harvest, the spiritual assignment, the frequency war, the protection methods that actually work, the empath trap, the ascension backlash, how to distinguish intuition from fear, and the 5 shifts that make you completely untouchable. This isn't theory. This is the exact process that's freed hundreds of chosen ones from cycles of obsession, attack, and spiritual warfare. Subscribe right now and hit that notification bell because I'm dropping advanced content on spiritual warfare, frequency mastery, and chosen one activation every single week. This channel exists to give you the tools mainstream spirituality won't teach you, the real methods, the ones that actually work. And if this video resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in these patterns, if you're finally ready to stop being a target and start being the sovereign, powerful light, being you were born to be, then you're exactly where you need to be. Drop in the comments right now which of these 5 shifts you're committing to making first. Are you stepping into radical responsibility, claiming energetic sovereignty, aligning with your mission, releasing the need to be understood, or finally, loving yourself unconditionally? I read every single comment, and I'll be here to support you through this transformation. This is your moment. This is your activation. The evil people obsessing over you have actually been your greatest teachers, showing you exactly where you still need to grow. Thank them for the lesson, then transcend them completely. You're not a victim. You're a chosen one. And it's time to start acting like it. If you found value in this video, Smash that like button so more chosen ones can find this message. Share it with someone who needs to hear this right now. And remember, the attacks aren't signs you're doing something wrong. They're confirmation you're doing something powerful. Keep going. Your mission matters. Your light matters. And the world needs you operating at full power, not dimmed by people who fear what you represent. Now go reclaim your sovereignty and watch how fast the obsession dissolves. I'll see you in the next one.